with me now in New York. Marq Claxton, former New York police officer and director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance. Also Rich Benjamin, director of the Fellow Program at Demos. Also Daniel Maree, the founder and executive director of the Million Hoodies Movement. And in Los Angeles, sorry you couldn't be here with us, Lisa Bloom, legal analyst for Avo.com and author of Suspicion Nation. I have a couple of important legal questions I want to get to with you, Lisa, in just a second, but let me start with my group here in studio. How many of you all, yesterday at that press conference, when that surveillance video was released of what appeared to be Mike Brown stealing something and intimidating a store clerk, did you react the way I reacted, which was just deflated, and your heart sank because you go, oh no, here we go. We knew exactly what was about to happen.
Well, you know what, TJ, it doesn't surprise me that the police department released that type of information, and I think it's an indication that it's an attempt to criminalize the victim, as we've seen happen over and over again. By criminalizing the victim, we're able to deny them their fundamental human rights, and that's exactly what's happening in this case. Mike Brown had his hands up. There's no reason why the officer should have proceeded and shot him the number of times that he did. And what the police department is doing in releasing that information is saying we were justified somehow in pursuing and killing Mike Brown.
We've seen this before, is the thing, and it almost follows a playbook, as some have been saying. It
does, and it's not just the police. We're going to see media attack Michael Brown after he's died, and as Daniel was saying, it kind of sort of justifies the killing in many people's mind, and it also plays into this idea that the police are circling the wagons. They're protecting their own. There's this knee-jerk response that's their first responsibility as opposed to serving the community.
At least I want to bring you in now on this legal question, and it's been back and forth, and Chief Jackson there of the Ferguson Police Department has gone, really, I'm still not sure of his answer, but whether or not the Officer Darren Wilson, knew that Mike Brown was a robbery suspect when he first had contact with him. Why legally is that an important question?
Well, you're right. It's a little bit difficult to decipher what Chief Jackson is saying, but putting together everything he said yesterday throughout the day, he seems to be saying that initially, when Officer Wilson stopped Mike Brown, he did not know that Mike Brown was allegedly involved in that shoplifting incident. But then as the altercation proceeded, he saw the cigarillos in Mike Brown's hand, and he put it together in his mind. If that's the case, then the incident is going to be somewhat relevant at the trial. You know, the problem we have is we don't have a clear story from the police about what happened. And Officer Wilson has a lot of time to look over all of the evidence and to come up with a story that's consistent with the evidence. That's a big part of the problem. And sitting here today, a week after this tragic shooting, we don't even know how many bullets were fired in the front or in the back. That's, you know, a big disclosure that needs to be made that still has not been made.
Mark, you deal in, you're a police officer, former NYPD, you deal in communities all the time, and some were saying, well, Governor Nixon had to send in a black guy. He had to send in a brother to handle his community. Well, yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, it might seem like just optics for the governor, but this was important for a black man, this brother who is from that community, to take over.
Because that brother related to the community, relates to the community relates to him. Let me just start off by saying something I've heard too often said on these programs, and that is about the incompetence of both the Ferguson Police Department and the St. Louis County Police Department, as well as some of the statements by the prosecutor's office here. We're dealing with a mass of incompetence, and I think it's about time that we start to address it that way, because what they are doing, the positions that they are taking, the assertions they are making, the evidence, or quote-unquote evidence that they are releasing, they are definitely, without a doubt, affecting the integrity of any valid investigation, and that's why a lot of people have been calling for the feds to step into this situation. But there is a strong need for people to have a presence before them, in the black community especially, someone who they can relate to, and someone who they believe empathizes with them and understands that condition.
Okay, what are we supposed to do there then? We know there's not going to be overwhelmingly African-American police officers on most police departments in the country, just not going to be the case. So what are we supposed to tell young brothers about their interaction? I wrote a piece this week in which I was talking about this thing until we almost had to why wouldn't it be in their mind that every time they interact with a cop, their life might be on the line every single time with an interaction with a police officer who's supposed to protect them?
Yeah, and you know, TJ, I'm conflicted on this issue because I think we're challenging young people not to have youth. We're essentially asking them to be older than they are when the onus and the responsibility should be on the adult. At the same time, though, yes, we're hearing from parents that we need better ways to protect and empower our young people from these types of incidents. So it's a double-edged sword. We don't want to tell young people to change who they are as young people, but at the same time, we definitely don't want these instances to continue happening.
Empowering, you know, you want to jump in there. Go ahead.
I just want to say something really quick because, you know, I want us not to look at black police officers necessarily as the panacea or the answer, because in reality, black police officers all across this nation, we've seen it time and time again, have become subsumed by this police culture. So you don't get that much different a result if you have a culture and an entity that really controls their mindset and their actions. So the answer, a significant answer, is not necessarily additional black police officers in a particular area.
All right, I'm going to take a quick break here. At least 20 at the top of the hour. Back with Marq Claxton, director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance, Rich Benjamin, author and columnist, also Daniel Maree, founder and executive director of Million Hoodies Movement, and in LA, Lisa Bloom, legal analyst for Avvo.com and author of Suspicion Nation. Lisa, we were talking a moment ago about whether or not Officer Wilson, if he knew that Michael Brown was a robbery suspect, that's going to be a key issue that goes to state of mind. Will it become an issue as well of Michael Brown's state of mind if he had in fact just robbed a store? If he had just, you know, was threatening to a store clerk, and then he saw a police officer come say something to him, would he automatically have thought that officer was there for him, and there he may have had a more aggressive stance? Could that be an argument that the other side also makes?
You know, we're putting a lot of speculation together. Luckily, we have the video of what's allegedly Mike Brown in the store, and we can see what happened. He didn't pull a weapon. He did sort of use his body in a somewhat menacing way with a much younger man, but he didn't assault anyone, he didn't hit, he didn't strike, etc. He essentially shoplifted. What I think is really important is what the witnesses saw Mike Brown do at the time of the shooting. 3 people say he was running from the car and he put his hands up. That does not sound to me like someone who would reach into a police vehicle and try to take a police officer's gun. I mean, we hear that allegation over and over. We heard it in the Trayvon Martin case. We hear it in the Ezell Ford case here in Los Angeles. You know, apparently there's a rash of young black men in America reaching for police officers' guns or security guns. Are you kidding me? I mean, I think that's really far-fetched. It's preposterous, and it's inconsistent with what we know of Mike Brown's behavior on the day of the shooting.
But one other thing to you, Lisa, here, and you mentioned the Trayvon Martin case. Well, we know the outcome of that case. There's another case as well in Bobby Moore in Little Rock, Arkansas, that didn't get a lot of attention, but in that case as well, he was out robbing folks, and the officer said that he tried to run over him with a car, and you know what? That officer is walking free today after juries couldn't come to a conclusion because they saw that young black man as a criminal. Will this be a big part of the case? And Lisa, you cover these things, so frankly, could we be going down this path again? You
know, TJ, I am very pessimistic and really outraged at this case because I think I'm seeing another injustice unfolding before us. Look at how the police are handling this case, releasing that video of Mike Brown, but not releasing the crucial information about how he was shot. Over-militarizing, treating this community as if they are war criminals, bringing out military weapons against peaceful protesters. That tells you their attitude towards this community. You know, my book, Suspicion Nation, is not only about the Trayvon Martin case, but why over and over again we see unarmed young black men shot and a lack of accountability. I mean, Oscar Grant, Amadou Diallo, we could spend the rest of the program listing the names. I'm very, very skeptical about what's going on in Ferguson. Look at the local prosecutor, for example. He's the only person in America who seems to think the Ferguson police handled themselves appropriately this week. That's the man who's deciding what charges should be brought against the shooter.
Rich, let me bring you back in here, and let's end on this. I got about 3 minutes left in this segment, and this is just important to do. what these young black men should do in those moments. We talked about it a second ago. You know, they shouldn't be further emasculated. They shouldn't be further demoralized. But in that moment with a cop, is that really the moment to be thinking about your rights or your manhood or your pride or your anything other than just surviving the moment?
You know, TJ, I believe young black men should survive the moment. They should stand down. But I want to add, it's easy for us to say that in the comfort of the studio, right? We don't live these men's life. Although we are often suspects, it's not in the same way as these guys are. Yeah. But I just want to also add the point is, though, even if he were guilty of shoplifting these cigars, how many kids in Greenwich are shoplifting? Are they going to be shot down? We see white-collar crime, money stolen at 10 million times the level that a box of cigar costs are. This is what we talk about when we talk about criminalizing these young kids. And so we have to separate apples from oranges. And the last thing I'll say is there has to be accountability. That if the facts show this wrongdoing on the police part, it would be helpful for young black men to see a perp walk on the police's part. That there is some justice that is served, and that would go a long way towards empowering people.
You train. Yeah, you talked about this during the break, actually. You work on this in training and helping with young men, helping with cops as well in your history, and what to do in those police interactions, what to do. And key is you teach them that very thing. Survive.
That's job number one. Whatever you have to do to survive that brief, hopefully brief interaction, you have to do it. Because if not, we have situations like this, and the police and the prosecutor's office are famous for making retroactive justifications for what they do. We did that because you did this 5 minutes ago, or 20 days ago, or 2 years ago. So we just have to encourage our young people to survive the interaction so you live another day to make whatever necessary complaints.
It's a damn shame, though, Anna, that we're even talking about this. Like, the onus is on the young man to make sure that the authority, the professional who's been trained.
You know, I think that's exactly what I was going to say, TJ. You know, we can tell young people to do this, that, and whatever to survive the night. But at the same time, I don't think that's going to change the fact that a black man is shot by a police officer or a vigilante in the United States every 28 hours, according to the Malcolm X movement. We have to understand that this is part of a larger trend in America. It's the criminalization of young black people that really starts, as Lisa Bloom has pointed out in her book, Suspicious Nation, as Michelle Alexander has pointed out in her book, The New Jim Crow. This really starts with the mass incarceration system in the United States and the criminalization of black youth across the country.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We're having these conversations. You know what? We will be sitting around this table probably before the end of the year talking about another young black man, which is a shame. Marq Claxton, Rich Benjamin, Daniel Maree, thank you all for being in studio. Lisa Bloom, you know I always appreciate your insights, and thank you so much. I know I'll be talking to you again. Thanks so much, guys.